Welcome to F-Bomb Friday. I'm your host, Tracy Preston, along with my husband, Todd. Hey, hun.
Hey, baby.
Are you ready?
I am ready.
Let's hit it. Most scripted episodes focus on a single monster. Most folklore episodes focus on a single legend. That's what makes this episode so different. We're pulling the camera back and looking at the entire map. There are stories that belong to a place. Stories that could only exist where the tale of a haunted lighthouse standing against the storms of Lake Superior, the ghost of a lumberjack wandering a forgotten logging trail, the phantom footsteps heard in an abandoned asylum. Those stories feel rooted in the land that created them. But then there are other stories that refuse to stay put. Stories that appear in different countries, different centuries and languages and cultures. Stories that should have nothing in common yet somehow do. A hunter disappears in the forests of Michigan. A shepherd vanishes in the mountains of Europe. A fisherman reports something enormous moving beneath the water. A traveler swears he saw glowing eyes watching him from the trees. Thousands of miles separate these people. Generations stand between them, and yet, when their stories are told, the monsters sound strangely familiar, almost as if humanity had spent thousands of years describing the same creatures using different names. Maybe that's coincidence. Maybe it's psychology. Maybe our fears are universal, or maybe, just maybe, the things waiting in the darkness have always been there, watching, following, adapting, appearing wherever human beings settle. Because if there's one thing folklore teaches us, it's this. Monsters travel well. On today's episode of F-Bomb Friday, we are exploring the creatures Michigan shares with the rest of the world. Not just cryptids, not just ghosts, but ancient fears. Today's episode is about far-flung folklore. Northern Michigan, late October. The leaves have mostly fallen. The woods have become skeletal. Every branch seems to point towards something unseen. A hunter climbs into his stand before sunrise. The forest is silent. Too silent. No birds, squirrels, or movement. Just the occasional whisper of wind through the dead leaves. Hours pass. Then something changes. The feeling arrives first. That ancient sensation humans have carried since before history. The feeling of being watched. He scans the trees. Nothing. The woods appear empty, yet the sensation grows stronger. The hunter grips his rifle, and that's when he sees it. A figure standing between the trees, tall and motionless, watching. At first, he assumes it's another hunter. Then the figure steps forward, and suddenly he realizes something is terribly wrong, because the shape standing among the trees isn't a man, and it isn't a wolf. It's something in between. Michigan knows this creature well. The Dogman, a beast said to stand upright like a human while retaining the features of a massive canine. Witnesses describe pointed ears, a muzzle, broad shoulders, powerful limbs, yellow eyes. Some reports claim it runs on 4 legs, and others insist it walks like a man. Many encounters with the same chilling detail. The witnesses feel observed, studied, as though the creature possesses intelligence beyond that of any normal animal. The modern Dogman legend exploded in 1987 after radio personality Steve Cook created a novelty song about sightings in Michigan. The song was intended as entertainment, a harmless April Fool's joke. Instead, something unexpected happened. People began calling. Lots of people, not to laugh, but to report their own encounters. Stories poured in from around the state. Some claimed sightings years earlier, others dated back decades. Many witnesses had never heard of one another, yet their descriptions were eerily similar. But here is where things become strange, because Michigan isn't the only place that knows this creature, not even close. If we travel across the Atlantic and journey back centuries long before Michigan existed, long before the United States existed, you'll find stories of another beast, the werewolf. And today, Hollywood has transformed werewolves into movie monsters, but historically, people believed they were terrifyingly real. Throughout medieval Europe, records describe wolfmen stalking forests and villages. In parts of France, Germany, and Eastern Europe, entire communities became convinced that human beings were transforming into wolves. Some stories involved curses. Others involved magic. Some claim deals with the dark forces, but strip away the supernatural explanations and something interesting emerges. Many descriptions sound remarkably familiar. Tall, hair-covered, wolf-like, intelligent, capable of standing upright, seen near forest, avoiding direct contact with people. Some details vary, but the shape remains the same. Then there is an even older figure, one that predates both Dogman and werewolf lore, and that is the Wild Man. Ancient civilizations across Europe, Asia, and in the Middle East told stories about hairy humanoids living beyond the boundaries of civilization. Creatures neither fully human nor fully animal, guardians of the wilderness, symbols of untamed nature, warnings about what lurked beyond safe settlements. These beings appeared in artwork and folklore and oral traditions stretching back thousands of years. Again, humanity returned to the same image. A creature standing upright, human-like, animal-like, living just beyond sight, watching from the forest. Now consider Michigan, millions of acres of forest, dense wilderness, remote stretches where a person can walk for hours without encountering another soul. Places where darkness arrives early, where strange sounds echo through the trees. Places where imagination begins filling in the blanks, or perhaps places where something else does. Because whether you call it Dogman, werewolf, wolfman, wild beast, or something entirely different, the pattern remains. Different cultures, different centuries, different names. Yet, somehow, the same creature keeps appearing, waiting among the trees, watching from the darkness, and if Dogman has cousins around the world, then he's far from alone, because deeper in those same woods, something even larger may be waiting. Monsters inspire fear, and then there are monsters that inspire curiosity. Bigfoot belongs to that second category because unlike many cryptids, Bigfoot doesn't usually appear as a predator. Witnesses rarely describe attacks, rarely describe aggression. Instead, they describe something almost stranger, a presence, a feeling that something massive is nearby, something intelligent, something that doesn't want to be found. The story begins as many Michigan Bigfoot stories do, in the Upper Peninsula. A hiker walks an isolated trail. The forest seems endless, pine tree after pine tree, mile after mile. The wilderness stretches beyond the horizon, then comes the sound. A crack, not a twig or a branch, an entire tree limb. The kind of noise produced by something very large. A hiker stops and listens. Hears silence. Then another crack, closer. The woods suddenly feel occupied, not by deer or bear, something bigger. Something moving deliberately, and then a glimpse, dark fur, massive shoulders, a figure disappearing between trees, gone almost immediately, leaving behind uncertainty and questions. The same questions people have asked for centuries. What did I just see? Thousands of people across Michigan have reported similar experiences. Some tell of massive footprints discovered in mud or snow. Others describe strange vocalizations echoing through the night. Still, others recount brief sightings of enormous figures moving through forest with surprising speed. Although descriptions may vary, the conclusion remains the same. Something big, something hairy, human-like, impossible. Witnesses often describe the feeling of fear, but also feeling of awe, the feeling of encountering something ancient, intelligent, something that belongs to the wilderness in a way humans never can. And Michigan is hardly alone. In fact, Bigfoot may be the most widespread cryptid on Earth, because wherever human beings have pushed against wild places, they seem to discover stories about giants, hairy giants, watching from trees. Now, if you travel west to the forests of the Pacific Northwest, there the creature is known as Sasquatch. Towering figures are reported in the deep forests of Washington, Oregon, and British Columbia. Witnesses describe creatures standing 7, 8, and even 9 feet tall, covered in dark hair, broad shoulders, moving with surprising speed. Native traditions concerning giant wild beings existed long before European settlers arrived. The name differed from tribe to tribe, and their stories differed. Yet, the core image remained familiar. Now, if we travel even farther across oceans and continents to the Himalayas, among the highest mountains on Earth, here, the giant is known by another name, the Yeti, the abominable snowman. And for generations, climbers and villagers have reported unusual footprints in snowfields high above civilization. And these stories tell of large ape-like creatures navigating terrain that would challenge experienced mountaineers. Some accounts describe aggression, others curiosity, yet others describe fleeting glimpses, a shape disappearing into fog, tracks that lead nowhere, a figure crossing a distant ridge before vanishing again. The details shift, but the outline remains. A giant, hair-covered, elusive creature living beyond the reach of ordinary people. Then there's Australia, a continent famous for animals that seem almost mythical already. Yet even there, deep in remote wilderness, stories persist of another giant, the Yowie. Almost identical descriptions, but a different continent, different culture, same creature, or at least remarkably close. And Russia has its Almas. China has its wild men. Indigenous cultures across America have their own versions. Even ancient Europe possessed stories of hairy forest giants. Repeatedly, humanity returns to the same image, the same silhouette, the same unsettling possibility that perhaps we are not the only intelligent beings moving through wilderness. And this raises a fascinating question. Why? Why do cultures separated by oceans describe creatures that sound so familiar? Why do stories emerge independently of places that have no contact with one another? Some researchers point to psychology. Perhaps humans instinctively fear what lurks beyond sight. Perhaps giant humanoids represent an ancient memory, a subconscious echo from a time when early humans shared the world with other humanoids, creatures similar enough to recognize, but different enough to fear. Now, as we know, Michigan forests are so vast, especially in the Upper Peninsula. If a giant creature wished to remain hidden, there are few better places. Perhaps that's why reports continue, generation after generation, decade after decade. The hairy giant remains, not fully proven, but not fully disproved either. While the giant footprints remain unsettling, at least they remain on land. Because some of humanity's oldest monsters don't walk among the trees. They move beneath the water, silent, invisible, watching from below. And Michigan has more than its share of those stories. Water has always frightened us. Not the water we understand, not the shallow stream, not the swimming pool, the other water, the dark water, the deep water, water that hides things. Human beings are land creatures, and we evolved on solid ground. When we stare into a lake or ocean, we are looking into a world that was never meant for us. A world where sight disappears and depth becomes unknowable, where something could be watching from below and we'd never know it. Now just imagine that calm evening on Michigan's Torch Lake. Water looks like glass. Shoreline is quiet. The setting sun paints the surface in gold. Everything appears peaceful. Then a ripple forms. Far from shore, large. A long shape briefly emerges before slipping beneath the water once again. And we know this as the Torch Lake Monster. Like many lake monsters, descriptions vary. Some witnesses describe a serpent's body, where others describe humps. Still others report a dark, elongated shape moving through deep water. The accounts are inconsistent, yet the central claim remains surprisingly stable. Something large has been seen in the lake, something unexplained, something capable of inspiring generations of stories. These sound like unique Michigan mysteries, until they discover the rest of the world has been telling the same story for a very long time. We're traveling to Scotland. You'll find one of the most famous cryptids ever reported. The creature said to inhabit the waters of Loch Ness, and that's Nessie. For nearly a century, modern reports have transformed the lake into a global destination for monster hunters. But the legend itself reaches much farther into the past. Stories of strange creatures inhabiting the loch existed long before cameras arrived, long before tourism, and before headlines. Witnesses described enormous forms moving beneath dark waters, creatures surfacing briefly before disappearing, shapes impossible to identify, things glimpsed rather than seen. Sound familiar? It should. Lake Champlain has Champ. Lake Simcoe has Egopoko. Scandinavia has lake serpents. Ireland has water beast. South America has river monsters. Ancient cultures from around the globe told stories of enormous creatures inhabiting deep water. Sometimes serpents, sometimes dragons, sometimes unnamed horrors. The names change, but the fear is the same. And perhaps fear is the key. Because unlike a forest, water offers almost no information. A forest hides things behind trees. Water hides things beneath an entire world. When a deer vanishes into the woods, we understand where it went. When something disappears beneath the lake, the possibilities become endless. Our imaginations rush to fill the void, and they always have. What makes water monsters so enduring isn't merely the sightings, it's the setting, the perfect setting. Dark water, unknown depths, limited visibility, ancient fear. Everything that is necessary for a monster story, everything that is necessary for belief, and perhaps that's why cultures around the world continue producing lake monsters. Because no matter where humans live, the deep water remains mysterious. Witnesses were all staring into the same thing, the unknown. And sometimes the unknown stares back. But if giant creatures lurk in forests and monsters swim beneath the lakes, then what comes next may be even stranger. Because some of the oldest stories aren't about giants at all. They're about something much smaller, something clever, mischievous, something that shouldn't exist. The little people. And wherever humans settle, they seem to appear. Not every monster is enormous. Not every creature announces itself with thunderous footsteps or earth-shaking roars. Some of the oldest beings of folklore are said to be tiny. And that somehow makes them even more unsettling, because the giant can be seen leaving large tracks, breaking branches and shaking the ground, but something small, something clever, something that can hide in the shadows between roots and stones, well, that's much harder to explain and much harder to catch. Long before Michigan became a state, stories already existed among indigenous peoples of mysterious little beings inhabiting the wilderness. The names varied, as did the descriptions, but many shared similar characteristics: small stature, human-like appearance, supernatural abilities, a tendency toward mischief, and a dangerous habit of luring humans into situations they would later regret. Among the most famous are the Memegwesi, according to traditions associated with several indigenous nations of the Great Lakes and Northeast. These beings could be helpful one moment and malicious the next. Some stories portrayed them as tricksters, others as genuinely dangerous entities capable of leading travelers astray. They were said to inhabit forests, swamps, remote places where human beings were not entirely welcome, and perhaps the most chilling of all, places where people disappeared. Other notable little people of Michigan lore include the Tommyknockers of the copper mines and the shit elves of the Upper Peninsula, also mischievous little boogers. Stories like these appear all over the world. In Ireland and Scotland, people spoke of fairies, not the sparkling creatures of modern cartoons. The old fairies, the dangerous ones, beings that inhabited hills, forests, and ancient places, creatures capable of helping travelers or destroying them. They stole children, led wanderers astray, created illusions, played tricks that sometimes ended in tragedy. People would leave offerings to avoid offending them. Entire communities structured parts of their lives around staying out of their way. And in Iceland, many still treat stories of hidden people with surprising seriousness. Construction projects have been occasionally altered because local traditions claimed certain rocks or landscapes belonged to the unseen inhabitants. Scandinavia has their elves and hidden folk as well. The entire globe has stories of strange little creatures, different names, different cultures, same pattern. Small humanoids, supernatural abilities, the connection to wilderness, an unpredictable nature. Why? Why does this story appear everywhere? Perhaps little people legends represent humanity's fear of the unseen. The idea that the world contains intelligence operating just beyond our awareness. And perhaps they are cautionary tales designed to keep children away from dangerous places. Or perhaps they are something older, fragments of ancient beliefs that survived long after their original meanings were forgotten. Whatever the answer, the pattern remains undeniable. Across continents and centuries, people keep telling stories about small beings watching from the wilderness. And Michigan is no exception. But if the little people are merely watching, the next entities may be doing something far worse. Because unlike the little folk or fairies, these figures don't hide in forests. They appear in bedrooms, hallways, doorways, places that should be safe, places that belong to us. Every culture has them and reports them, and almost every witness describes the same feeling: terror, pure, immediate, primal terror. It's 2:00 in the morning. You wake unexpectedly. The room is dark and silent. You try to move but can't. Your body refuses to respond. Your chest feels heavy. Your breathing becomes shallow, and then you notice something. A shape standing in the corner, watching, motionless, blacker than black. A silhouette shaped like a human, but somehow wrong. The figure doesn't move, it doesn't speak, it simply watches, and somehow that is worse. Of course, we are talking about shadow people, a topic we discussed just a few episodes ago. Among the most famous of the shadow people stories involve the Hat Man. Reports from around the world describe an unusually tall shadow figure wearing what appears to be a broad-brimmed hat. Witnesses often have no prior knowledge of the phenomenon, yet their descriptions remain consistent. Michigan has its share of such stories that are told reluctantly and often begin with the same phrase. Listen, I know this sounds crazy. Because unlike a lake monster or a Bigfoot sighting, these experiences occur in deeply personal spaces like your bedrooms. Places where witnesses feel vulnerable. Places where ridicule can feel almost inevitable. And yet, people continue telling the stories because what they experienced felt real, very real. The truly strange part, these reports existed long before the term shadow people became popular. In Newfoundland, there was the old hag, a terrifying figure said to sit upon sleepers' chests. In Japan, a similar phenomenon became known as kanashibari. Scandinavian folklore described the Mara. Other cultures told stories of night demons, dark visitors, bedroom apparitions, oppressive presences. Again and again, humanity arrived at remarkably similar conclusions. Something appears at night. Something watches. Something leaves witnesses terrified. Skeptics point towards sleep paralysis, and indeed, many reports align closely with known sleep paralysis experiences. But folklore rarely concerns itself with certainty. It thrives where certainty ends, and for many witnesses, the explanations feel incomplete because they insist they weren't sleeping. They insist they were fully awake. They insist the figure was there, watching. Whether psychological, supernatural, or something else entirely, shadow figures may represent one of humanity's most universal paranormal experiences. Every culture seems to have encountered them and fear them, and every culture gives them different names, yet somehow the description remains the same. And if shadowy figures are frightening, the next entity may be worse, because shadows at least stay silent. Children do not. Across 3 different states, Michigan, Ohio, and Connecticut, people tell remarkably similar stories about strange, human-like beings lurking in the woods. Small bodies, pale skin, hairless heads swollen to impossible proportions, eyes that gleam from darkness. They call them the Melon Heads. No one agrees exactly where they came from, but in Michigan, the legend centers around the woods near the historic Felt Mansion in the dunes of Allegan and Ottawa counties. According to local lore, a group of children suffering from hydrocephalus, sometimes called water on the brain, were housed in a secret institution. Some versions say it was an asylum. Others say it was a hospital. Still, others claim it never existed at all. But the story always ends the same way. The children had escaped into the surrounding forests. Over the years, they became wild, secretive, and increasingly inhuman. Then there is Ohio. There, the story changes names but keeps the same bones. The children are said to have been under the care of a mysterious doctor known only as Dr. Crow. According to the legend, he performed horrific experiments on abandoned or orphaned children, causing their heads to swell unnaturally. Eventually, the children rebelled, killed the doctor, burned down the facility, and vanished into the woods surrounding Kirtland. To this day, locals tell stories of strange figures watching from the tree line along lonely country roads. Travel east to Connecticut and you'll hear another variation. This time, the Melon Heads are often said to be escaped patients from a burned down asylum. They inhabit isolated back roads and forests, emerging at night to stalk trespassers. Drivers tell stories of seeing small figures dart across roads, hearing scratches on their cars, or catching glimpses of oversized heads peering from the darkness. Different states, different roads, different villains, yet somehow the same creature. It's a pattern folklorists see all the time. One community invents a story, another adopts it and changes the details to fit local landmarks and local fears. And before long, the monster is cousins hundreds of miles away. The Melon Heads are particularly fascinating because the legend may reflect real historical anxieties. In the 19th and 20th centuries, people with physical deformities, developmental disabilities, or neurological conditions were often hidden away in institutions. Stories of cruel doctors, abandoned hospitals, and forgotten patients became fertile ground for urban legends. And over time, tragedy transformed into horror, and horror transformed into folklore. That's what makes the Melon Heads so enduring. They're not simply monsters, they're echoes. Echoes of abandoned hospitals and medical fears. Echoes of stories passed from one generation to the next around campfires, in school hallways, and on lonely roads after dark. And whether you're standing in the forest of Michigan, the back roads of Ohio, or the dark roads of Connecticut, the warning is always the same. If you hear something moving just beyond the trees, don't go looking for it. Children are supposed to make us feel protective, comfortable, safe. But these stories reverse that instinct, and the result is profoundly unsettling. So far, our journey has taken us through forests, lakes, bedrooms, and doorways. We've encountered giants, little people, shadow figures, strange children. Yet, we've only scratched the surface because some of Michigan's shared monsters don't walk the earth at all. They fly above it, their wings blotting out the stars, their shadows stretch across the forest below. Now we look skyward. Winged creatures that refuse to stay confined to a single culture. Before human beings feared what lurked in the woods, before they feared what moved beneath the water, they feared what came from above. The sky is beautiful during the day, but at night, it becomes something else. An endless black ocean stretching beyond imagination, a place where things can move unseen, a place where shadows have wings. Stories of giant birds are among the oldest on Earth. Long before airplanes filled the skies, people told stories about immense winged beings, creatures capable of carrying away animals, creatures capable of controlling storms, creatures so large they seemed impossible. Throughout North America, many indigenous traditions speak of the Thunderbird. Descriptions vary from nation to nation, but the Thunderbird is generally portrayed as a powerful, supernatural being associated with storms, lightning, and immense strength. When it flapped its wings, thunder rolled across the sky. When its eyes flashed, lightning struck the earth. The Thunderbird wasn't merely an animal. It was something greater, a force of nature, a being worthy of respect. Yet, alongside these traditions exist countless reports of giant birds that seem far more physical, far more tangible. Throughout the 20th century, witnesses across North America described seeing enormous avian creatures, birds with wingspans far beyond those of known species, birds that appeared prehistoric, that seemed impossible. Michigan has contributed its own share of such reports, sightings scattered across decades, descriptions of massive dark birds soaring above forests and lakes. Most can likely be explained. Misidentified cranes, eagles, pelicans, optical illusions, yet a handful remained stubbornly strange, and those are the stories people remember. Then there is another famous winged creature, one that emerged hundreds of miles away but has made appearances in the Great Lakes state, the Mothman. In the late 1960s, residents of a small town reported encounters with a bizarre, winged humanoid, a creature described as tall, dark, winged, and with red glowing eyes. The reports became legendary, and once again, we encounter the same pattern: a winged being, a watcher, an omen, a mystery. Different location, different name. Same shape emerging from the darkness. Perhaps that's why stories of winged creatures hit so hard, because they combine two ancient fears: the fear of predators and the fear of the unknown sky. Human beings evolved looking upward for danger, for hawks, for storms, for signs of approaching disaster. A giant winged creature touches something primal within us, something ancient, something that remembers being vulnerable. And yet, as frightening as giant winged creatures may be, at least they belong to the natural world. Next, we visit a darker place, a place where fear becomes personal, a place where blame is assigned, where communities create monsters out of human beings. Few figures appear more consistently in folklore than the witch. Every culture seems to have one. Every village seems to remember one. A mysterious woman, an outsider, a healer, a hermit, someone different, someone feared, blamed. Michigan has its share as well. Stories passed down through generations, warnings whispered, legends attached to lonely roads and forgotten places. Among the most famous is the Ada Witch, a story that has become woven into Michigan folklore. Like many witch legends, the details vary depending on who tells it. Some versions portray her as a misunderstood woman. Others transform her into something far darker, a malevolent presence, a spirit, a curse lingering long after death. The facts blur. The folklore survives. The same is true of the witch of the Dudgeon Swamp, another Michigan legend rooted in isolation, rumor, and fear. The details shift with each retelling, but the central image remains: a woman connected to the wilderness, feared by her community, transformed into a legend. And Michigan is far from unique in this. Travel nearly anywhere in the world, and you'll find similar stories. European villages told of witches gathering beneath moonlit skies. African traditions describe sorceresses and spirit workers. Asian folklore contains tales of supernatural practitioners capable of extraordinary feats. South American legends speak of shape-shifters and night wanderers, the fear that someone possesses power beyond ordinary understanding. Historically, witch stories often merge during difficult times, such as crop failures, disease outbreaks, unexplained deaths. Communities would search for answers, and when answers couldn't be found, suspicion followed, and that suspicion has always been fertile ground for monsters. What makes witch legends so potent isn't magic, it's uncertainty. The idea that danger might come from within a community, not from a beast in the woods or a creature in the lake, but from a neighbor, a stranger, a person. The possibility is uniquely unsettling because monsters are often easier to confront than people. Still, as antiquated as witch stories are, there exists another figure even older. The creature born not from suspicion, but from hunger. A creature tied directly to one of humanity's darkest fears, the fear of becoming something monstrous. Winter can be beautiful. There's fresh snow and silent forest, frozen lakes, a landscape transformed. But winter has another face, one that our ancestors knew all too well, the face of scarcity, of starvation, of desperation. Imagine northern forests centuries ago. No supermarkets or deliveries. A failed hunt could mean disaster. A severe winter could mean death. Entire communities lived with that knowledge. Survival was never certain. Against that backdrop emerged one of the most terrifying figures in North American folklore, the Wendigo. Among various Algonquin-speaking peoples, stories developed about it being associated with greed, starvation, and cannibalism. Descriptions vary across traditions and storytellers. Some portray it as a gaunt giant, others a spirit, others as a human transformed by unspeakable acts. What remains consistent is symbolism, insatiable hunger, endless consumption, a craving that can never be satisfied. The Wendigo is frightening because it represents more than a monster. It represents a possibility. The possibility that extreme circumstances can strip away humanity. The possibility that survival itself can become monstrous. And once again, Michigan shares this fear with the world because similar beings appear elsewhere. In Europe, stories warned of humans transformed by curses and hunger. In parts of Asia, tales spoke of hungry ghosts doomed to eternal craving. Other cultures imagined spirits driven by endless appetite. Different forms, different names. The same underlying terror. That desire can consume a person. That greed can become a monster. That hunger can transform us. Unlike Bigfoot, lake monsters, and giant winged creatures, the Wendigo feels deeply psychological. It doesn't merely live in the wilderness, it lives inside human fears, human choices, human weaknesses. And perhaps that's why the legend remains so powerful, because everyone understands hunger. Everyone understands temptation, and everyone understands desperation. The Wendigo simply takes those feelings and stretches them into a nightmare. On today's episode, we've traveled across the forest, across lakes and mountains and oceans, across centuries, and we've discovered something remarkable. The monsters never stay where they're supposed to. Eventually, a pattern emerges, one that becomes increasingly difficult to ignore. Human beings seem to tell the same stories over and over again. Why? The answer is simple. Our fears are universal. People everywhere worry about being lost, about starvation, darkness, isolation, predators, death. And those fears naturally create similar stories. But there is another possibility. A possibility folklore refuses to let die, hiding within every story we've discussed on this episode of F-Bomb Friday. What if these stories survive because they are based on something? Not necessarily monsters or cryptids, but experiences, encounters, moments that people struggled to explain, moments that became stories, stories that became legends, legends that became folklore. Because the truly strange thing isn't that Michigan has monsters. The truly strange thing is that everyone else seems to have them too, separated by oceans, language, and centuries. And somehow, the shapes remain. The giant, the beast, the watcher, the trickster, the witch, the hunger spirit. Perhaps they are reflections of ourselves. Perhaps they are warnings from the past. Perhaps they are nothing more than stories. Or they are evidence of something humanity has been encountering for far longer than we realize. Whatever the truth may be, one fact remains. When the fire burns low, when the flashlight battery begins to fade, when the forest grows quiet, and the water becomes still, the house settles around you in the middle of the night, the stories return, waiting, watching, patient, and just beyond the edge of the light. Well, hun, you outdid yourself.
Oh, thank you. We're sharing people. So why not share all of our folklore with the rest of the world, right? We share our Great Lakes.
Are we sharing?
We're kind of forced to share, I think.
Maybe they shared with us because, as you mentioned, some of these stories existed long before this country even existed.
Yep, and some of them
So
started.
maybe we borrowed.
We did borrow. Some of them started in other places before they came here, like the Mothman. I don't know. I don't think Bigfoot started here, but I think Bigfoot's kind of moved around. Bigfoot's everywhere.
Clearly.
Yeah.
It's all over the place.
Bigfoot's everywhere, but we just can't seem to really get any really good pictures. Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy. And we just watched that episode of Jack Osbourne.
Jack Osbourne, yes, with Jason Mewes.
They were looking for Bigfoot.
They were looking, and they heard some stuff. It was a pretty cool show.
They heard some weird shit.
Yeah.
But I'm like, there's no way you're going to see nothing. Please. Nice try.
Yes.
Well, this is a great story. And I think we should mention this is our 300th 300
yep.
episode.
Yep. And thanks to our favorite fan, Tabin Rice, for reminding us.
Tabin Rice.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for allowing us this opportunity to get to 300.
Ain't nobody stopping us.
And we got many more to go.
Who else has put out 300 episodes in just over 2 years?
I don't know if anybody. We are workaholics.
We deserve an award.
We do.
Did somebody mention a check? Well, great story, hon. This was a big one.
Yes.
And it definitely taught me a thing or two about where some of these other cryptids have been seen. It's very interesting.
Yeah. And, this isn't even all of them. I did have to cut quite a few out, for time purposes.
You're lucky.
Yeah.
So you want to sign us out, hon?
I sure do. You better lock your doors. You better lock your windows. And you might want to check under your bed.
So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. And we will see you again on Malice Monday.
We'll see you on Monday for episode 301.